So far, we are working with only public repositories. How can we create it and how to work with private repositories? This is my GitHub account. So far, I have 61 repositories. If I go here, this is Revity, just for your information. And I'm going to create a new repository. We have already tried this option. So we can create a repository from here or else even from the Git CLI as well. Even though we create from the Git CLI, we should create one repository over here. This time we are going to name it as a private demo repo. Okay, so we are naming it as a private demo repo instead of demo repo. And here we have a option public and private. As I said, we are creating a private repository and we can choose this option. Next, we can initialize a readme file if it is necessary. For now, I am not creating any readme file. Let's create a repository. Okay, before creating it, I will just show you from the other account. This is Vayankil's account, right? As a Vayankil user, I'm a Vayankil user. If I go to Revity's account, we can see here 58 repositories are there. I have supposed to see 61 repositories, but among 61, 3 repositories are private repositories. If the private repositories we are creating in account, it won't be visible in the public. Even I could able to clone the repository called Docker. Why? Because this is a public repository. I cannot clone the private repositories. And we are creating one more repository in the Revity's account. So let's create one more, and this time it is 62. Even though we create one more, we could still see only 58. Why? Because we just now created a private repository, so it won't reflect, or I cannot able to find those repositories as a other user. So which means that your repositories are secure whenever we create a private repository. Okay, that is first thing. And we can clone this repository if necessary by using git clone option. Okay, let's try this one and we'll see what will happen. Instead of using SSH URL, I'm going to use the HTTPS URL. Okay, HTTPS URL. Why? Because SSH URL can work even though on the private repository, because we have kept our credentials with this account. Okay, so I'm using just HTTPS link. I will tell you why I'm using this one. I would like to clone this repository onto my developer2 system. So currently I'm under root. Here I have few repositories. Now let me clone the repository. Git clone followed by the repository. I'm trying to clone a private repository of the Revity's account. Let's try to do that one. And you can see here, usually, whenever we are cloning any repository, if it is a public, it won't ask for credentials. Whereas if we are trying to clone a private repository, of course, we need to provide the credentials, which means that authorized people only can able to clone these repositories. Okay, even though you know the repository URL. Now let me cancel it and I will do the git clone, and I'm going to use the SSH URL. So let me use the SSH URL and we'll try to clone it and we'll see what happens. I'm trying to clone the private repository and you can see here it has been cloned, and it is appearing as a empty repository. Why I can able to clone this repository? If you do remember, sometime back we kept our developer1 and developer2 credentials onto our Revity account. That is the reason if I use the SSH link, always SSH link, it is already authorized to use these credentials, so I can able to clone without any issues. And I can see that one over here by using git private repo, and nothing is there anyway because it is a empty repository. And I will go back over here again and I'm going to my account. And if you see here, 62 repositories are there. Let me click over here and you can clearly see that this is a private repository and remaining all are doesn't have any tag, which represents that those all are public repositories. Wherever you can see private, which means that those are private repositories and will be accessible for the users who has access to this account, or else whose keys I have added to this account. Only those people can able to access the private repositories, so that my code is secure and I can grant the access to the people who is authorized. That is the benefit of using private repositories. Now we'll create few files and we'll try to push it over here. So here what I'm doing, again I'm going to create vi index.html and save this file. Git status, if I see, I have created a file git add dot git commit -m Okay, before committing, if I do git log, no commits are there. Why? Because it is an empty repository. So git commit -m added index.html file, git log. Now we have done first commit, and git push origin master. And if you see here, it is representing headmaster, and you cannot see the origin. Why? Because origin doesn't have any commits at this moment. This is the first commit we have done. That too we have done in our local repository. Now we are pushing these changes onto remote repository. And while pushing also, it doesn't ask for credentials. Why? Because we have used the git URL, nothing but SSH URL. So it won't ask for any credentials. I'm already authorized person to push the changes. Now if I do git log, you can see even your master also representing to the same branch. This is how we can create private repositories, and we can give authentication by using the SSH keys. And you can maintain your code as a secured one. Your code as a secured one. And one last thing I would like to show you. If I go to, sorry, if I go to my account over here, okay. So you can see here, these all are the repositories, right? You can see the symbol. This symbol represents that it is a public repository. Wherever you could see the lock, that represents the private repository. Private repositories can be visible for the guys who created it or owner of repositories, not for others. Okay, that's all for this lecture, and see you in the next lecture.